Let's begin with Surtr. I don't think this one needs an explanation. She's appeared in every single high-risk CC so far, and she's also great for general content due to her ability as a boss killer. Same thing with Bagpipe, except instead of making bosses a joke, she makes DP cost a joke. Eyjafjalla appeared in CC3, 4, and week 1 CC6, so she's still a pretty decent unit and great for general content as well. Basically all of these units here are great for general content, so I don't think I need to elaborate further on that. Exia, although she didn't appear in any CC except for CC5, she hard carried CC5 so much that I think she's deserving of that spot up there. Saria was great for CC3, 4, and 6 week 1 with her skill 3 to boost arts damage. Same thing with Ifrit for CC3 for week 1 CC5 and week 1 CC6. SilverAsh is an interesting case because although he wasn't extremely prevalent in CCs up to CC6, he was still seen here and there in CC4 as a physical option, as well as CC3, and in CC5 I've seen him used quite substantially in risk 30. As for Thorns, he's the only oddball contender there that doesn't appear in max risk. However, he is the unit that easily stomps general content the hardest, and he has made a few appearances such as risk 31 CC4 and week 1 max in CC5. As for the operators on the green zones, I think the top 3 doesn't need much of an explanation. Suzuran, Weedy, and Angelina has seen consistent CC use with the S3, S2, and S2 respectively in basically CC3, 4, and 5 I believe. CC6, only Suzuran sees use, but that's to be expected seeing as the map isn't very friendly for them. Nightingale was pretty prevalent in CC3 and CC6, saw 0 use in CC4 and 5. For Schwarz, her use was also pretty decent in high risk CC5 at about risk 30, and she was also used in risk 32 I believe for CC6, which makes her a pretty great option. For Rosa, she hasn't seen a ton of CC use beyond CC5, but she does have a lot of good application in like week 1 max and other stuff that I believe earns her her spot. For Ceobe, she does see some decent use in CC5 caster ban. I believe she's the hard carry for those clears actually, as well as CC6 week 1. And Phantom, although explicitly not in any actual week 2 high risk clears, still serves as a pretty decent unit for carrying week 1. Same goes for Blaze, except that she's amazing for general content, so she's closer to the right. Now let's talk about the operators in the yellow zone who aren't super fantastic. Magallan's an exception because I couldn't find good justification to put her in the green zone because her use is very niche, as very little players like to go for low operator clears, but her niche is certainly there and she's very strong for it. However, she is basically irrelevant in high risk CC, except for I believe Pyrite with her skill 1, as well as general content because her drones take up deployment slots. Arc is that high because she sees use in buffing for CC6, and it's also pretty decent in regular week 1 max risk. Although he's a very fun unit to play around with in general content, he heavily relies on either you having Shining or SilverAsh / Surtr, which not every player has. For Hellagur, he's fallen off a lot, but his use in week 1 max is still somewhat relevant. Like for example, CC6 in dueling the Croc, but he's just not that fantastic of a unit right now, even in general use. I really hate placing Eunctes so low, but she does see some CC5 risk 30 use, which is something to give her credit for. As for Blemishine and Shining, they do nothing too special, they're just all around okay unit. And as for the 5 units in the bad category, Mostima was used in CC4 max risk with the Permo Store alongside Skyfire, but that's more gimmick than an actual strat that can be replicated in the future, so I don't think she's still too meta relevant in that regard. As for Chen, there's a CN Chen sim that always tries to do max risk or theoretical max risk with Chen. That's why you see so much max risk with her, but most of these runs do have Chen optimized out eventually, so although she does objectively appear in CC quite a lot, she is not that fantastic. Skadi is just really terrible. Once you get into the later game, you don't use duelist cards, and she can't do anything in CC. So she's at the bottom. So Hoshi, they also don't do a ton of special stuff. For example, in general content, you'd rather use a healing defender or your AoE guard, and it's very rare that Hoshi's damage actually comes into play enough. As for Siege, I've made my opinions on her clear in my Siege video, but it just boils down to her being very mediocre at her role as a lane holder or as a DP generator. So that's the list. Feel free to comment below if you have any suggestion on the content or the format.